Well, in parts of the Midwest, it's being called the worst flood in recorded history. And people in some areas are desperately praying that the rain will stop. In fact, the floods have been devastating for so many homes, and some residents are saying that they've just never seen anything like it. Heather Sells has a story.
Already, flooding in the Midwest has killed at least 3 people in Indiana and Missouri after raging water swept away their cars. In Peoria, Illinois, the Illinois River has crested at a record level, 29.3 feet, and flooded downtown businesses. Along the Mississippi, massive problems. More than 100 barges broke free in St. Louis, colliding with a bridge. Across the region, residents are in disbelief.
I've lived here all my life, and I've never, ever seen anything like this.
We come downtown to walk a lot, at least a couple times every week, and never seen anything like this.
In Comstock Park, Michigan, the high cresting waters devastated Bruce Lane's neighborhood, and then a second tragedy. His home was looted.
Everything in this home is destroyed. This fella just took everything out.
In Des Plaines, Illinois, outside of Chicago, homeowners are still cleaning up.
Came in like a waterfall. We were bailing and urging it down the drain pipe until the window burst. The basement window burst from the water and people parading outside.
In other communities, the race is on to fill sandbags and fortify in advance of rising waters.
There's so much work to be done and there's not enough people to do it.
For farmers, the rains have already delayed corn planting and could reduce the amount they'll plant this year. Even as some of the rivers are showing signs of cresting, the recovery isn't expected to come quickly or easily. The National Weather Service says many waterways in the Midwest will remain high on into next month. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, you look at those stories, Pat, and it seems like there's always something, isn't it?
Well, I tell you, this country's being just overwhelmed with bad weather, and it's just this the beginning.
Yeah.
So I guess from now we start going into hurricanes and tornadoes, but my goodness. So anyhow, pray for those folks in the Midwest and that flooding, the worst on recorded history. Well, there may be another possible tie between those suspects in the Boston bombing and I don't know whether we call it a religion or the philosophy or the system of Islam. Lee Webb has that story from the CBN newsroom. Lee.
That's right, Pat. A radical Muslim may have had a strong influence on the older of the 2 brothers. Officials say the friend steered Tamerlan Tsarnaev toward a strict form of Islam. His family says Tamerlan gave up boxing and stopped studying music after meeting the man known only as Misha. Tamerlan also began opposing the Iraq and Afghanistan wars and turned to jihadist websites under Misha's influence. Investigators say Tamerlan may have encouraged his younger brother to follow suit, but the mother disputes that story. She claims her sons are innocent and Misha was just a friend. Police, though, are interrogating Johar Tsarnaev, the younger of the 2 brothers, in his hospital room. He's been upgraded from serious to fair condition. Well, the Boston attack shows how small homemade weapons can wreak havoc on a community and an entire nation. And it's prompting authorities and the public to be more aware. Mark Martin has that story.
An abandoned school bus in a remote location in Virginia.
Fire in all! 3, 2, 1.
Less than 10 pounds of homemade explosives, and the bus is no more. It's a demonstration of the power of bombs that can be made anywhere, with items found right under your kitchen sink. Watch it one more time. A chilling sight, especially when you consider, what if this was a terrorist attack?
One of the goals of detonating the bus is to show the harsh reality of homemade explosives, to make authorities aware that a lot of damage can be done with only a small amount of bomb-making materials.
They are used more commonly all the time, and it's just a matter, unfortunately, of when as opposed to if. So rather be prepared and have to catch up, and that's what we're trying to do, is keep people on the forefront of what's going on.
Mike Doherty works for American Canine Interdiction. The organization primarily trains dogs to detect bombs, but in this case, they're teaming up with Tripwire Operations Group to teach people. first responders, law enforcement, and bomb squads to be on the lookout for homemade explosives.
I hope all our students, when they go back to their respective jurisdictions, that we have enabled them to be able to identify homemade explosive formulations. If they were to go to serve a search warrant or stop a car and it's full of all these precursor chemicals, if they're able to put the two and two together to say these people are posing a threat of some kind.
According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, between 1998 and 2008, approximately 4,200 incidents involved the possession, manufacture, and use of homemade explosives for experimentation and criminal purposes. The ATF reports 5 were terrorist bombings, and the rest involved people experimenting and motivated by curiosity.
We want to be ahead of the curve to protect our neighbors and those that are in our communities around us.
In 1995, the Oklahoma City bombers crafted a 5,000-pound bomb on American soil. A bomb that destroyed 1/3 of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, created the 30-foot wide, 8-foot deep crater, and took the lives of 168 people. That's why experts say it's urgent for public servants and those they serve to take the issue of homemade explosives seriously, to be educated on what to look for, and to call authorities immediately if they suspect a bomb of any size is being made, or worse, on the verge of detonating. Mark Martin, CBN News, Smithfield, Virginia.
Wow. Pat, you can't help but think there's going to be a big demand now for those bomb-sniffing dogs to get them trained and out in the field for events like that.
They are very valuable, and they've got olfactory sensibilities that are just thousands of times more sensitive than human. And oh my goodness, just a little bit of fertilizer and a few other ingredients you can get at a local hardware store, and suddenly you have made a bomb, and then it's extraordinary. We have so-called soft targets in America. You know, Eric Stackelbeck did a study of the jihadists next door and what they can do. It doesn't take much, and innocent-seeming chemicals can be used to wreak havoc. And when you think of the awful carnage and the people losing their limbs, it's not just the fact that they were killed, which is horrible in itself, but the limbs, legs were cut off, and people will be permanently maimed because of this. This is very serious and very terrible. So, well, we live in a time of terror. But I say it before and I'll say it again. They say none dare call it terror. Let's name it what it is. It is Islamic motivated terror. It is set up to terrorize a population, to interrupt their commerce, to interrupt their normal way of life, and to make them afraid. And believe me, it won't take many bombs to accomplish that purpose here in this great land. Lee.
Pat, the judge in the trial of a Philadelphia abortionist has thrown out 3 of the 8 murder charges against the doctor. Prosecutors charged Dr. Kermit Gosnell in the death of a 41-year-old patient and 7 babies reportedly born alive. They told jurors Gosnell and his staff killed the babies by cutting their spines. Gosnell's attorney, though, argues there is no scientific or objective evidence that they were born alive. The judge dismissed 3 of the babies' murder charges with no explanation. Gosnell could still face the death penalty, though, if convicted on the 4 remaining counts of first-degree murder. Former employees have already been convicted and have testified against Gosnell. President Obama will deliver the keynote address Thursday at Planned Parenthood's annual fundraising gala. Cecile Richards, president of the nation's largest abortion provider, praised him, saying, President Obama has done more than any president in history for women's health and rights. In his re-election campaign last year, the president promised to fight Republican efforts to cut Planned Parenthood's funding. Pat?
You know, aren't you horrified at this? The President of the United States is going to give the keynote address at a fundraiser for an organization. Now, get this. They perform between 300,000 and 350,000 abortions a year. 300,000 babies are slaughtered by Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood now receives in excess of $500 $400 million of taxpayer money. And the American Center for Law and Justice, of which I happen to be the chairman, has lawsuits. One just concluded with the settlement. I will not at liberty to speak of the numbers, but it was substantial in Texas against one of their small branches. The big lawsuit is in California, where so-called whistleblowers have come forward to say this organization is triple billing the United States government, and as what I understand, the U.S. Justice Department is coming on the side of the American Center for Law and Justice in that lawsuit. And here the president is going to try to raise money for those people who are now being accused of defrauding the federal government. How about that for politics, Lee?
The U.S. Army is removing Bible verses etched in the scopes of their weapons. The verses are from the Gospel of John and 2 Corinthians, to name a few. The manufacturer Trigicon inscribed them on the sights. Soldiers at Fort Wainwright in Alaska tell Fox News they were ordered to turn in the scopes so the verses could be scraped off and covered with black paint. An Army spokesman says Trigicon has agreed to remove Scripture from future orders of those scopes. The IRS will be giving furlough notices to all of its employees for at least 5 days before Labor Day. The tax agency says the move is necessary because of the spending cuts forced by the sequester. That's when Congress and the White House failed to reach a budget deal earlier this year. On the furlough days, all IRS public services will be closed. Those include toll-free phone help and taxpayer assistance centers. Other federal agencies are also furloughing employees, and critics say the move is just a publicity stunt to make the budget cuts look more painful than they really are, Pat.
There's no question about it. The defenders of big government will go to any length to force the issue upon the American people to say, you've got to have big government, you have to spend more money, you have to run big deficits, because if you don't, we will shut off your tours to the White House. Or your friendly IRS agent won't be there to collect your taxes. And that, of course, is reason enough not to sequester. Lee?
Yes, we haven't heard the last of that either from the federal government, Pat. Meanwhile, House Republicans say former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton bears responsibility for last September's attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. 4 people, including Ambassador Chris Stevens, died in the attack. An interim report faults Clinton and other senior State Department officials for approving cuts in security at the Benghazi facility. The report said senior State Department officials knew that the threat environment in Benghazi was high and that the Benghazi compound was vulnerable and unable to withstand an attack. The report is also highly critical of President Obama and White House staff, accusing them of changing accurate talking points drafted by the U.S. intelligence community in order to protect the State Department. Well, Christians and Jews came together this week to stand with Israel. A night to honor Israel was held last night in Virginia Beach at the Rock Church International, and Pat was a special guest. He told how he made a vow to God that he would stand with Israel no matter what.
We're here because we love Israel. Why do we love the Jewish people? Well, you know, I serve a Jew. His name is Jesus. He's the Messiah of Israel. My life is ordered by a book called the Bible, and all the books of the Bible, with the possible exception of one, were written by Jews. We have a Jewish religion that we adhere to. And therefore, we feel that the Jews are our brothers and sisters. We are one in the family of God.
The largest pro-Israel organization in the U.S., Christians United for Israel, sponsored last night's event. Pat?
That was fun. I really get jived up speaking in defense of Israel and in support of Israel. I love the Jewish people, and I love Israel, and I think it's been reciprocated. They know that I'm one of their strong friends and supporters. And every chance I get, I'm going to Boston in another few weeks to speak at another similar gathering, and I think it's important that we make a stand. Israel is being surrounded by enemies, and when I see some of the propaganda aimed against Israel, it just makes me sick because it's so much of it is false. But these people are amazing, and the Bible says they are the chosen people of God.
Lawmakers in France have voted to legalize gay marriage. The move came after months of heavy debate and protest, as you see here, that flooded the streets of Paris. Opponents of the law say France is not ready to legalize adoption for same-sex couples at this point, and polls indicate the country is divided on that issue. But France becomes the 14th nation to pass a law allowing gay marriage, following New Zealand last week. An Iraqi pastor imprisoned for nearly 2 years is free thanks to the efforts of a U.S. ministry and an Oklahoma senator. Abdi Allah Hamza, better known as Pastor Jamal, spent 21 months in prison. Jamal is a Christian who converted from Islam. He was working to spread the gospel in northern Iraq. He worked with U.S.-based World Compassion to distribute food to refugees there. World Compassion's Terry Law met with officials in northern Iraq, carrying a letter for Republican Senator James Inhofe requesting Jamal's release. And eventually, President Masoud Barzani of the Kurdish regional government granted him amnesty. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.